Hi everyone, Magnus here. It is round number 3 of the Chess Olympiad, and as we get further and further into this event, we start to see some clear favorites, and teams start to emerge because it is a Swiss system. So if you win a game, you play against someone else who won a game. You win 2 games, you play someone else who won 2 games, and so on and so on. So as we get into round number 3, the top teams are really starting to emerge. So we've got teams like India, teams like USA, all on 3 points at the moment. But today, specifically, I'm going to be covering a game from Team India that was played by Arjun Erigaisi. It was a wonderful attacking game, and I really think you guys will enjoy it. But at the same time, right before we get into the game, do feel free to leave any game suggestions from the Olympiad in the comments, as it is quite hard to keep on top of all of them. And additionally, if you want some other countries to be represented, maybe you have your own country that you would like me to cover, do let me know and I might get around to it. So let's get straight into the game. Alright, getting into the game between Grandmaster Arjun Erigaisi and Peter Prohazga from Hungary. We get the game starting with pawn to c4, English opening by Arjun, but after e6, knight to c3, d4, d5 and d4, we very quickly transpose into the Queen's Gambit declined. We get knight to f6, a classical line, knight to f3, not going for a standard bishop to g5. Arjun has been very creative in these Queen's Gambit declined openings, and as you're about to see later on in this game, he has made a name for himself with a certain attacking idea. So bishop to e7 by the Hungarian Grandmaster. We get a capture in the center, very standard, establishing the Carlsbad structure, which is about to happen. After bishop to f4, knight moves, bishop goes back. Very interesting here, bishop to d2. You want to preserve the bishop pair. You don't want to go to g3 because the knight will capture it. And if you go to e5, there can always be f6 in the future, and the bishop will be dead. Black will claim the 2 bishops and try to claim complete equality. So, bishop to d2, castles, e3, and if c6 is to be played, the Carlsbad structure will be established, this pawn chain going this way, and black's pawn chain going this way. Now, normally, a white pawn chain headed in this direction means that white wants to attack with their pawns going up the board because you want to fight in the direction of your chain, and with black's pawn chain pointing in this direction, black normally wants to attack on the king side. However, white has in fact not castled or made any intentions very clear yet. There are systems where you can castle long, you can castle short, and as we're possibly about to see, keep your king in the center for maybe a little bit longer than most people would. Now, bishop to d3 comes from Arjun, knight d7, normal development with queen c2, c6. Carlsbad structure is now fully established by both players. And pawn to g4, an extremely aggressive shot by Arjun, saying that if you want to take my knight, I'm going to take your pawn on the corner, and that would force your king over, open line for my rook, and I would be getting down to business. So, of course, the Hungarian Grandmaster does not want to get involved with this dangerous little g-pawn, Gary over there with the poison. Instead, he tries to plug the hole, put an end to the attack with this move, knight to e4. Now, knight e4 is an interesting move. It looks like it's a pawn sacrifice, but after knight to f6, actually, it's a bit of a fork, because this pawn on g4 is very loose, and if you want to try and preserve your extra pawn, well, that's going to come at the cost of a big attack, 2 bishops for black, and this just doesn't look like any fun for the white pieces. You've lost your critical light squared bishop, left with this dead dodo on d2, and a very suspicious knight that's just guarding a pawn. So this would have been good for black. But, of course, Arjun doesn't take the bait. He launches forward with h4. He wants to send his pawns up the board and checkmate the black king. Rook to e8 played. Pretty normal defensive move. You can either get the bishop to f8 or the knight on f8. As the old saying goes, a knight on f8, there is no mate. But we're about to see if that will hold true. Pawn goes to g5, f5, lashing out. The only move, by the way, if you tried to play knight on f8, hoping for no mate, then there is simple captures. No more play on this pawn, as it has just been defended, and you're not even giving up the light squared bishop, because once again, there is no knight to f6. So, instead of that, f5, the Grandmaster from Hungary looks to defend his horsey and says, if you want to en passant me, I can take with this horsey, and then I will reinforce the pony in the middle. Arjun does take, however, and after recaptures, he plays knight to g5, adding immense pressure to this central horse. This horse cannot stay there for long, but pawn to h6 is played because there really isn't anywhere for the horse to go. If you move the horsey, knight takes or bishop takes, and we collapse. So really, you do actually have to just force the knight on g5 away from the post. Arjun takes with this knight, saying that if you want to take my knight, I'm going to take this knight, and then I'm going to take this pawn, and all of a sudden, all the light squares are mine, and your king is about to get butchered. So, Peter, not interested in any of that. He captures this way, recaptures with the hanging horsey, and after that we get complete liquidation, but Arjun is simply up a pawn. Bishop to e6 played, trying to develop the last piece, potentially bringing it to the king side for the defense, and rook to g1 from Arjun. This is a very natural developing move. You want to get the rook lined up with the king, and then possibly bishop c3 and a pawn sacrifice could be very interesting, lining up the cannons on Gary there. So bishop gets played to f6, possibly anticipating this move, bishop to c3 and d5, but now there is the critical move, bishop to g6, which was in fact missed. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure why bishop g6 is so much better than castling first. It looks to me like you can play bishop to g6 at any time, but bishop to g6 and rook to f8 apparently castles. This move order is better. For some unknown reason, the engine remains an enigma in many ways. It also looks to have reevaluated the position, so long castles from Arjun, still a fantastic move. Getting the king to safety on the queen side and preparing to put the barrels to the black king. Queen goes to e7, bishop to g6 now played, forcing the rook to an unpleasant square. Rook goes to d8, and bishop to c3. Like I said earlier, potential pawn sacrifices are looming. If we can try and force that bishop away, e4, e5, maybe d5 can come, and we sack the house, we can go for the king. But pawn comes to a5. Peter's not messing around. He wants to checkmate Arjun, and Arjun plays bishop to f5. Now, this is apparently a step in the wrong direction. e4 might have been the way to go here, trying to push forward these center pawns and open up the dark squared bishop. Opening files and pushing your center majority is a good idea when your opponent's trying to attack you on the queen side. But I guess Arjun wanted, I don't know, bishop takes, queen takes, and he thought it might have been an easier game to play with this pawn majority. Not exactly sure, but the Hungarian takes the pawn on a2, takes the bait, and Arjun sinks his teeth into the g6 square, preparing all kinds of sacrifices, pawn pushes. This pawn on a2 was simply not worth it. Rook goes back to f8 now. Not entirely sure what the idea behind rook to f8 was. I guess you can now bring more defense to the king, but rook comes to g1, and Arjun has nasty intentions on the king side. King goes to h8, pawn to e4, rook f7. This was the idea behind rook f8, trying to guard the king, but it's simply too little too late. Queen comes to d2. Now we're starting to threaten potential sacrifices, but actually Arjun has a devious idea here, a really nice tactical sequence after the queen drops back. He's threatening pawn to d5. And the idea is very nice. If the bishop captures on c3, queen takes on c3, and you can't even stop rook takes h6. If you go king h7, rook g7, and this is a double check with the rook and the bishop to the king. If the king goes to the corner, rook g8, checkmate, bishop and queen slicing, rook guarded, delivering the check to the king, with a queen that can't even defend him. So, otherwise, what else can you do? There isn't really anything to do. We see c takes on d4, pawn to e5, the only winning move really. Apparently rook takes g7 gets the job done as well. This is an absolutely crazy move. You'd have to give up the queen here if the rook were to take this queen h6, but Arjun goes for a clinical move here, pawn to e5, kicking the bishop away from the diagonal, and after bishop takes on h4, really an only useful square for the bishop. At least now we can sort of hope for a bishop g5 savior, but pawn to e6 sacrifices the bishop on f5. A nice move here. If you take on f5, then there's queen h6, king moves, rook takes g7, and queen takes g7 with a quick checkmate. So you obviously cannot take the bishop, but what about bishop to f5, bishop g5, you might say? Boom! Rook takes h6, bishop takes h6, queen takes, king moves to the side, and queen h7 checkmate. Everything is loose, and the queen is boxed in by his own heavy pieces to his detriment. So, pawn e6, killer move, mate in the evaluation. We have to see rook f6, and now pawn to e7, attacking the queen. This is basically just game over. The queen is under fire. If the queen moves, then there's queen takes h6, sacrificing the queen. And then after captures, queen h7, rook takes h7 with a checkmate. So pawn e7 really spells the end. We see queen takes a7, queen h6, g takes, captures with check, and the mate is allowed on the board. Good sport, Peter from Hungary plays into this beautiful checkmate after the queen sacrifice. So I thought this was just a really nice attacking game from what is probably the most stacked, the strongest team in the Olympiad right now, Team India. Now, Team USA, like I said earlier, is up there with India, but with currently a little bit of shaky form from Levon, although today he did have an excellent game that he played to a very high degree. Clearly, switching back to his lifetime e4, e5 repertoire did him some good, rather than messing around in the Sicilian, which got pretty scary on round number 1. But if Team America can settle in to the Olympiad, then it looks like it could start to develop into a 2-horse race. Now, obviously, it's too early to tell. There's still a bunch of teams on 3 out of 3, but I will keep you guys posted and updated, and do let me know if you have any games that you'd like me to cover, as I said earlier. Now, if you did enjoy this video, please do consider liking and subscribing, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!